In Ravenna, after the Battle of the Catalonian Fields and the departure of Attila from Gaul, despite all the efforts of Aetius, sadness and alarm again replaced a short relief. The patrician did not succeed in obtaining the hand of Princess Eudoxia for her son Gaudentius. The chronicler Prosper of Aquitaine notes that in 452, the inhabitants, terrified of anguish, were unable to defend themselves. In spring, Attila attacked Italy with a large army, this time mainly composed of Huns. It was known that Ravenna was pushing Constantinople to common action against the Huns. This is why, in Attila's army in Italy, they were only Gepid and Ostrogoth volunteers. The bulk of the armies of these principal German allies of Attila, living on the Balkans and to the north of the Black Sea, remained to protect the Danube frontier. The riparian Franks came to participate in the campaign of Italy knowing that no one would dare to attack their country left almost defenseless. Orestes protects Patavium, his hometown, while nearby towns like Emona and Nauporius are ransacked. 2 Roman camps defending the passage into Italy by the Julian Alps are swept by the vanguard of the Huns. The Emperor Valentinian convokes Salvian, "You're one of the few people I can talk to sincerely. Last year, I gave Aetius only a quarter of the Italian legions. Now, when Attila begins to invade Italy and besieges Aquileia, I am obliged to give to Aetius all the Italian army. We can no longer act otherwise. But today Aetius proposes to me to leave Ravenna and to retire to Arles or even farther into the depths of Gaul. What to do? Salvian again feels pity for the young emperor. He has a strong handle. In Gaul you will be surrounded by his troops and will be in his power. You know his perfidy, his thirst for power and his cruelty." Valentinian sighs. "Yes, I remember perfectly. How he eliminated poor Boniface. His eyes fill with tears. Great God, why should I depend all my life on this person? When will this painful situation end?" Salvian says with a firm voice. "You must not go to Gaul. But you cannot stay in Ravenna either, if I understand the strategy of Aetius. You must evacuate your court in Rome." Valentinian wipes his tears and asks, "What are you talking about?" Aetius will very probably abandon the north of Italy, and perhaps Ravenna, to the plunder of the Huns. Knowing that the cavalry after 4 months of campaign must necessarily return to the steppes. Then he will simulate an offensive again. Besides, he cannot do otherwise. If he fights sooner, then the Huns, furious of this impediment, will crush him and all Italy will be lost. The emperor calms himself a little. "Thank you for that advice. I will do this. I will retire to Rome with my guard and ask Aetius not to let the Huns go south of the Po." Then his face again takes on an anxious expression. But what if Aetius is in conspiracy with Attila? Certainly, Salvian could not tell his relative, then it's all over. And he tries to calm him down. Yes, it is suspected that he met Attila on the Catalonian fields during the night. But direct evidence does not exist. When he disappeared and reappeared I also began to suspect him, but the next day he scattered my doubts by his courage and his gift of command. Aquileus with its very powerful fortifications resists a long time. Orestes remembers how 27 years ago under the walls of this city, he came here with his little guard on the threatening call of Galla Placidia. Aetius, fortunately for him, arrived with his Huns late. Otherwise Orestes should have been fighting against the Huns. Orestes looks at his Huns officers, some of whom were among the mercenaries of Aetius. Some of these companions in arms might have killed him in an implacable battle between the partisans of Jean and Galla Placidia. He could have died for the cause of Galla Placidia while he was personally more favorable to Jean. After a month of bombardment by the catapults of Edecon, the walls do not yield. Olmy's offers. We may, perhaps, renounce the capture of this city, and continue our movement towards Rome. It is enough for us to leave here a small army which will watch over the town. Attila reflects. Suddenly, he raises a hand and points a forefinger. Look. Orestes turns his head and sees a flight of storks. The emperor exclaims, "That's a good omen." The storks deserted a condemned city. It orders Edecon, "Continue the bombing and dig underground mines. When we take this city, considered impregnable, the others will not resist." The Princess Honoria disappeared without leaving any trace. The wildest rumors circulate about his destiny. That is why Attila began to think she was probably killed and hardened the war. Frightened by the rumors about the capture of Aquileia and the ferocity of the Huns, the cities yielded most often without resistance. Panicked, the inhabitants dispersed. The Huns thus took all the major cities of northern Italy. The Roman army remained timidly on the south bank of the Po, watching the smoke of the fires on the other side of the river. Neither the Emperor of the East Marcian, courageous in his speeches before the courtiers, nor the young Visigoth king Thorismund, was hastening to the aid of the Romans. The barbarian kings, who had obtained a de facto independence, and the insurgent peasants were at best limited to prayers for the salvation of the Romans. The demonstration of strength and discipline of the Huns has pushed a large fraction of the population of Gaul, suffering from the crisis, to think about a safer life possibility and the reduction of the tax burden. If Attila became their emperor in case of marriage with the Princess Honoria or as a result of her conquest. The Visigoths began the war against the Alans of King Sangiban, their allies of yesterday, and are preparing for a new march on Arles in order to oblige the Romans to concessions even more important. In one of the palaces of Milan Attila finds, with surprise and indignation, a picture on which are drawn the Roman emperors seated on the thrones, and the Scythian kings fallen on their knees before them. His vengeance at this manifestation of Roman vanity is subtle and wise. He invites a painter and orders him to change the characters and roles, to draw Attila, seated on the throne, and the obedient Roman emperors before him, putting under his feet bags full of gold symbolizing the tributes they paid him. After these corrections, he organizes the varnishing of the new painting. All the inhabitants of Milan has to pass this table. The spectators are struck by the terrible realism of this new version. The detachments of the army of Wanges crossed the Po and made a bold raid to the south towards Rome and returned, after this recognition in combat successfully, to the main forces of the Hun army concentrated at the edge of the Po near the city of Mantova. Attila has assembled all his forces as a fist for the decisive blow. The Western Roman Empire seemed to live its last days. In Rome, fear in front of the Huns turns into panic. The Emperor Valentinian and several noble Romans are ready to flee on board the ships to Constantinople. But this solution would only be temporary. After the victory over the Western Roman Empire, Attila will surely once again bring the Eastern Roman Empire to its knees or suppress it. In this situation, everyone wants negotiations with the Huns. Where is the Princess Honoria? It must marry her with Attila. But then what will become of the poor Emperor Valentinian? Regardless, one do not think of him at such a terrible moment. The essential thing is to stay alive. One will see then what to do. Emperor Valentinian decides to send a delegation to the Huns. One must try to avoid the worst, ask Attila for his conditions. Go with gifts, be prepared for humiliating claims, accept the payment of annual tribute. The Senate unanimously votes the negotiations and appoints as ambassadors the two most respected senators. The meeting of the inhabitants of the Eternal City approves this decision. A new meeting of the Senate in the presence of the emperor, ministers and generals. Who will chair the embassy? The question is difficult. No guarantee that Attila will receive ambassadors in such a situation, so favorable to him. Perhaps, can one send his old friend Aetius? Several senators and councillors of the emperor objected violently. Indeed, one cannot predict what Aetius would agree with Attila because he is capable of everything. Then one remember that bishops Ainan and Lupus found an agreement with Attila in Gaul. It is said that Lupus even wrote a letter to Attila with the request to release the hostages given by the city of Troyes. And Attila returned these hostages. Gradually, everyone accepts the idea that the delegation should be led by the Roman Pope Leo.